Broadcasting from an undisclosed location, which may or may not be a bedroom converted into a recording studio. I'm Rex Overdrive, back with another edition of Abominations in Tehcnicolor. This show is brought to you by the fine folks over at Audible. Head on over to audibletrial.com/abominations and sign up for a free 30-day trial membership. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Get a free audiobook on us once again at audibletrial.com/abominations. Now joining me as always is Adam. How's it going, Adam?
Oh, it's going good. It's going good. Spent the entire day home with my son, sick with the flu. I'm well rested. I think I'm in the clear, so now I get to enjoy myself and talk movies and enjoy the Abominations podcast. So I'm excited.
Is the little guy starting to come around yet? Is he starting to feel a little bit better?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think we're out of the woods.
Awesome.
So to speak. Much like our topic of this week.
Yeah, a little bit later we'll be diving into M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. We got Glass coming out this weekend. Excited to check that movie out. But there's been some other cool news that sort of popped up this week. John Wick 3. The trailer for this movie popped up. Adam, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it.
I watched it, yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yep.
So people have checked out my YouTube channel. They know that I'm a big John Wick fan, and you are as well. So
absolutely.
What are your sort of hopes and anticipation level for this? I don't know if this is going to be wrapping up the John Wick franchise or what, but I'm pretty excited. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess two things. So last chapter, they kind of expanded on the
Continental.
The Continental, yeah, the culture and the, I wouldn't call it lore, but this concept of this like safe ground, this safe haven place that these hitmen and women can attend and take shelter in or whatever. And I loved that. I loved that movie kind of just took that and ran with it a little bit further. And then the other thing that I enjoyed was, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think the original John Wick had a body count of like 70 something, and then chapter 2 upped it to like 120 something.
Jesus.
So naturally, I would hope that chapter 3 would follow suit and look to maybe one up the second chapter. So we'll see, though. I mean, there's a point where it's just too much. So I hope it's good. I hope Halle Berry turns in a good performance, because it has truthfully been a while since I'd seen her in anything that I liked her in. So we'll see about that. It's, hopefully they'll just, make sure to have good editing when they're shooting some of that stuff. Cause Keanu Reeves is just awesome with guns. Like that guy, he is just so good with handling weapons. Like you can't fake that, you can't Hollywood that. Like, he's well trained.
Yeah, and I mean, there's even the genre for these types of movies.
Yeah,
called gun fu. Like that's so cool. And I mean, Keanu Reeves had a rough patch shortly after the Matrix trilogy there, and it's awesome to see that guy coming back because in the mid 90s he came out. I don't know, did Speed come out in like 95, somewhere around then? But yeah, he had Point Break and the Matrix. He was really, I think he was one of the highest paid actors at that time. But yeah, it's nice to see Keanu Reeves having a really solid franchise behind him. So I'm really excited for it. There's some sweet stuff in the trailer. There's a sequence where they're like all riding horses. I think he had like a sword in his hand, like he's like hacking limbs off guys while riding on horseback. But yeah, I'm really excited. I hope they find some way to just sort of step it up yet another notch in terms of like action packed level here.
Right,
so
right.
We'll see if they can pull it off. But
yeah.
Other news, there was a short teaser, and I don't know, this all sort of came out of nowhere, and it's really surprising because we literally just had a Ghostbusters movie like 2 years ago. But it turns out that Ivan Reitman's son, Jason, who's a notable director, he directed Juno and Thank You for Smoking. He's going to be directing an adaptation and I think continuation of the Ghostbusters. It's going to be in line, in canon with the original 2 Ghostbusters movies. So that's pretty cool. I'm not sure if it's going to be a brand new lineup or what, but after that recent one, I mean, I'm not clamoring for a Ghostbusters movie, but I sort of need like a palate cleanser.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all going to depend on what approach they take, you know. It's just kind of, to your point, it's not something that I would have thought we'd get in the slightest, you know, anytime soon at least. And when I saw this, I thought like, well, it must be new actors or, you know, like what are we going to get? And I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully all I can say is I hope they take very good care of it and, you know, don't make it into a Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or something like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they got to handle it with care, you know. There's history with this franchise, so you gotta caress it and nurture it, and you know.
Otherwise, South Park will make an episode of, you know, claiming that they raped the Ghostbusters.
Did they seriously do that with the last one?
With Indiana Jones, they did.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. I don't
Kingdom
think I
of
caught
the Crystal
that episode.
Skull. Oh, it's good. It's outrageous as usual, but yeah.
I'll have
Kudos
to
to
look it
anyone
up.
that's seen that episode.
But I do want to talk about one more thing before we get into our main topic here. The first trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home came out, and I don't really care too much about the movie. This sort of iteration of Spider-Man really isn't my favorite. Just what we're sort of getting just really makes me appreciate those first 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. But we got our first look at Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, and we watched that Fox Kids Spider-Man animated series.
Yep.
And I loved Mysterio in that cartoon. I always thought that character was cool, and I can't believe we're getting to see this character in a live action Spider-Man movie and in the MCU. So, are you looking forward to seeing Jake Gyllenhaal doing some tricks?
I think so, man. I mean, I don't know. I feel like if a movie like Doctor Strange, you know, something like that, almost like I feel like that opens some doors for some of the lesser known characters to get a little bit of the spotlight. And I don't know. I think we're in a pretty superhero diluted world right now. Like it's like anything goes. Like we just, you know, the money's there, they're making money. As long as they keep making money, then they'll keep making them and pumping them out. So it's like, you know, well, we've got a lot of things to choose from. Some of them will be good, some of them won't. You can kind of pick and choose what you like and what looks good. And you know, it's like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's like you browse and, you know, that looks good. I'll have a little bit of that. And some of the stuff you might not like, you might skip it. Like I didn't go see Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that's okay. But
right.
But Mysterio, though, I feel like that would be one where I might do a little sample. And if it's good, I might go back for seconds. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think also Hydro Man's in there. That's another character I remember from the animated series. I never really got into comic books as a kid, but I've dabbled in them the last couple of years. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. They're doing good at adapting these Spider-Man villains into the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Foxx really. Jamie Foxx and Paul Giamatti and some of these guys, they really just set the bar pretty nice and low for all these up and coming films. So you gotta shout out to those guys for really lowering the bar. Thanks, Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, that was so similar to Jim Carrey's The Riddler. That movie's quite bizarre, but I think we can move into our main topic for the podcast, M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
And now our feature presentation.
We may question ourselves at moments such as these. Did we make the right decision to settle here? We are grateful for the time we have been given.
What we seem to have amongst us is a predator of some type.
We do not go into their woods. They do not come to our valley. It is a truce.
This color attracts those we don't speak of. You must bury it.
Creatures have never attacked us without reason.
We do not believe our boundary has been breached.
All right, you guys. So we're talking about The Village this week from 2004. This film came out on July 30th, grossed $114 million domestic and $256 million worldwide. Had a $60 million budget. 20th highest grossing film of the year. So that would be right in there with Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Spider-Man 2, Passion of the Christ, and the first Incredibles. So good company, not as good of company as some of the other years we've seen. It's no 1985 by any means, or 95 for that matter. But
that's true.
But still, it depends what you like, I guess. But as far as what people like, Rotten Tomatoes has a tomato meter of 43% on this. This is green. Audience score isn't even really that much better. It's 57%. So we're gonna get into a little bit of the perception of this Shyamalan film. And just to touch on that, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, obviously. You'd kind of have to be living under a rock to not kind of know at the time if you were going to see this. You kind of knew a little bit of his resume going into this film. Very anticipated, given his previous big ones that had come out. I think at the time it was on the heels of Sixth Sense, Unbreakable Signs. So The Village was highly anticipated. But I'm anxious to kind of get into some of your thoughts, Rex. What do you have as far as maybe the first experience with this film? Do you recall your first viewing. That's the big thing with M. Night Shyamalan, is the first viewing is always probably the best viewing, and it's never the same after that. So
yeah, so I still remember seeing this for the first time in theaters, and
okay,
I was really excited going into this movie. I mean, we're talking about 2004 here. M. Night Shyamalan coming off of The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs. This man was on a hot streak. We're talking magazines publishing front covers that are saying like he's the next Steven Spielberg. So this guy was about as hot as you could really get. And after seeing the trailers for this movie, they really sort of paint a darker, maybe even more horror or thriller sort of tone of the movie. And we'll get into that later. But coming out of the theater, I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't necessarily what I was expecting or what I wanted, but I thought it was, and I mean, the ending of the movie, you either buy into it or you sort of come out really disappointed or hating it. But I mean, it's not like it was my favorite movie of that year, but I still remember walking out of the theater and it's like, man, that was really good. And you know, it's a very well technically shot movie and well acted, and we'll get into the cast later. But I really enjoyed The Village the first time I saw it, and you know, I there was a block or a period of time where I didn't really revisit it until like the last couple of years. I've went back maybe once a year or so and have watched the movie. So I really enjoyed The Village.
Yeah, I don't think I saw it in the theater, and that's a regret of mine. I feel like I would have enjoyed it more. You know, I think I knew what to expect when I saw it. Probably saw it on DVD later or something, but you know, I was expecting a plot twist, as you would, but yeah, I really just the quality of the movie. Like, I really enjoyed it as well. I wish I could have caught it in the theaters.
Well, and also with M. Night Shyamalan movies, it's like if you don't go see it in theaters, you're eventually going to be spoiled. Like somebody's just going to tell you, hey, did you hear about the ending? This is actually what happens. When you finally get a chance to watch the movie, you have all these sort of preconceived notions in your head, and you know, it sort of taints it in a way that, you know, you're going to sort of have a negative outlook on it before you even watch it. So you almost have to avoid everything, or just, you know, go out and see it, or just not see it at all. Yeah.
I'd rather just kind of go as soon as you can. Don't give yourself any exposure to anyone that you know has seen it, and just because even an expression or just some sort of like, you know, some people are bad with that. They have no filter and they just blurt it out. So, you know, if you're debating whether or not to go see M. Night Shyamalan movies, just go do it as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Glass, you know, get on it.
Right. Yep. And you can't even see Glass without seeing Unbreakable and Split.
That's true. That's true. That's
homework. Yeah. Definitely have homework. But let's sort of get into the cast. Now, M. Night, even going back to, you know, The Sixth Sense, you know, he had Bruce Willis and I don't remember. Well, obviously he had Samuel Jackson. No, not Sixth Sense. Who else was in The Sixth Sense?
Haley Joel Osment.
Well, aside from him. Was there any?
I don't know. I'm not
can't
sure.
Recall.
Yeah, there's probably some other ones in there.
But then you transitioned Unbreakable, which was his one directly after that, where you bring in Samuel Jackson. I don't remember who played his.
You got Robin Wright. Robin Wright was his.
Right.
And Bruce Willis's kind of, they were separated, or it was kind of like his wife, but I don't think they were married, or there was some dynamic there. But
And then I guess you even go into Signs where you have Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, who's in The Village, and one of the Culkin siblings.
Kieran, I think.
Is that
Kieran Culkin?
It's his Macaulay's younger brother, right?
Yeah, I can't recall his first name, but
so those three movies have had notable actors in them.
Abigail Breslin, I think.
Oh yeah, that's right. She plays the
breakout
daughter.
Performance. Yeah,
she's like maybe 5 there.
The water's contaminated.
Yeah, Spencer
I don't like
Breslin.
Old water either.
Spencer and wait, no, not Spencer Breslin. What am I talking about?
I don't know.
It's Abigail Breslin and then Macaulay Culkin's younger brother. So
yeah, right.
I don't know what I'm talking about, but
who had asthma?
That's right. So all 3 of those movies, they've had notable actors in them, but when you transition into The Village, it's completely different. You have an entirely stacked cast of like world-renowned actors where you have Joaquin Phoenix, William Hurt, Bryce Dallas Howard, which I can't recall anything prior to this that she was in. So this may have been sort of like her breakout role that really got her some more jobs. I mean, her dad, Ron Howard, obviously, but this is the earliest thing I can remember her in.
Yeah, me too.
But you also have Adrian Brody, Brendan Gleeson, phenomenal actor, Brendan Gleeson. That guy's great. Sigourney Weaver, Michael Pitt, and Judy Greer. Also, a young Jesse Eisenberg who just plays like a village teenager. So
yeah, his is almost, dangerously close to being an extra in this movie.
Yeah.
But he did have a line in the end, though. I think it was almost toward the very end of the movie. Before he spoke, had a line in there. But
okay. He does.
Funny to pick up those actors later in life after they make something of themselves.
And his character did at least have a name too. It was Jameson.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So a star-studded cast. You also have a nice connection between Bryce Dallas Howard and Judy Greer is that they're siblings in The Village, but they're also siblings in Jurassic World. So that's kind of a funny connection there. About
I didn't know that.
11 years later or something like that. So yeah, pretty cool. So I guess any comments or anything about the cast?
Just it was a real, their performances are just amazing. We're gonna dive into those because it's something, to your point about the way that this movie uses its cast, or just the cast that it has. It's important that they had these characters just to really breathe life into the writing of this movie and everything. Like, I feel like with this cast, it really allowed the writing to really bounce off the page, or whatever you want to call it. The plot of the movie and the writing together with that cast is, it's for me was a home run. But there was something about this plot maybe that left people a little bit with either a bad taste in their mouth, or maybe they wanted something more out of it or something like that. So, I think, maybe we need to get into the plot a little bit and try to sort this out. What do you think?
Yeah. So The Village, it essentially sort of follows a community in sort of the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods. They're sort of in this, I guess you could call it a field or pasture. It's maybe, I guess, how many people would you say live in this community? Maybe 50 people or so?
Yeah, when they have kind of their gatherings, like the wedding and stuff like that, I'd say no more than 100, probably less than 100 people, and their large dinners and stuff like that. Like probably more like 50. Yeah, I'd say that's probably closer.
Yeah, so there's this community that's surrounded by woods, and there's these creatures that I guess the people can't enter the woods. There's this pact between these creatures and the villagers that they each, I don't know, what would you call it? They don't enter each other's sort of territory, I suppose.
Right.
But when a certain villager is stabbed, wounded, Ivy, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, has to venture out into the woods in search of medicines from the towns. But there's some relationship dynamic in between and some other stuff. But that's essentially what the village is about.
Well, yeah, until you get to the point of no return where we'd get into some spoiler material, right?
Yeah, so if you haven't seen The Village, like, in no way, shape, or form should you be listening to this. Because you almost can't really talk about this movie without talking spoilers. That's pretty much how it is for every M. Night Shyamalan movie. So
this would be the point in which we will, bookmark this part of the episode, and from here we'll get into the rest of the true plot, I guess, post spoiler, post twist conversation.
Right.
So from there, I mean, she, through the quest to get the medicine in the towns, she discovers that all along this village was a man-made creation that her father, I think, was the leader in, and he's the son of a billionaire. Is that what you gathered when they did the reveal of the box with the newspaper articles and all of that stuff?
Yeah, because then you also have
because his last name's Walker, right? And the town is called Walker, I think.
Yeah, it's the Walker Wildlife Preserve.
They basically like own the whole city, and therefore he has total say over what aircrafts fly over the town, like what, they have a large barrier that's basically patrolled by, natural life law enforcement guys, whatever you want to call them, DNR, those guys. And so they really have a strong setup that should allow them to have total isolation. And they've created this facade, and all the children, this anyone that's kind of outside of this, brother, what do you call the elders, the village elders? They're the ones that are aware of the secret, and everyone else within the village is kind of on the other side of the veil, or they have this veil over their eyes, and they're not able to see the truth about the outside world and all of that. And they use fear to control their perception of that reality and make it so that they don't want to go outside of this bubble. It's almost this like Truman Show kind of situation where when the people within the village get curious about the outside world, they use fear to make them want to stay and make them want to view their current situation as content, as like, I don't want to go out there because it's scary and dangerous, right?
Right. Yeah, they have to sort of rein the villagers back in by unleashing these creatures, which are, one of the elders is sort of in this outfit that's cloaked in red and has these claws and sort of like a pig or like a boar snout. So they use fear as a tool to sort of contain these villagers and try to not. The Truman Show analogy is very good because They really tried.
Yeah, you like
it's
that?
really sort of the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think the big reveal is not so much like, well, for me, it was a big thing, like, not so much like I knew something was out there. I knew that something was off about not going out there. Like there's something weird with that. But you begin this movie thinking that you're in like the 1800s or something like that. It seems like a timepiece, like a time period piece that this movie is. It's set in a different time, and then all of the sudden you're just kind of blindsided, like, holy shit, it's like current day, and this is just like this massive, not massive, but it's this big I don't know, facade. It's a like they call it a farce. I think he calls it a farce. And even the way they talk, they've really just used this old style English language. The way that they speak to each other is even very dated. And so the whole time they just have you like in the palm of their, M. Night, he's got you in the palm of his hand the whole movie. And I think you go into a movie, an M. Night Shyamalan movie, expecting a twist. And I think, with this one, I don't know if it delivered enough of a revelation because it was somewhat predictable, maybe, but for me at least, like, I saw it going there. So, you can't be dissatisfied with something is coming. And I was still surprised, like, that wasn't quite what I expected still. I knew something was coming, but I didn't expect it to be, current day surprise,
Yeah, and even, I guess, even as far as when Ivy, who's played by Bryce Dallas Howard, when she's venturing off to get medicine for Lucius, played by Joaquin Phoenix, after he's been stabbed by Noah, who's Adrian Brody's character, shortly before she takes off, her dad, William Hurt's character, takes her into this shed, and obviously she can't see because she's blind, but he tells her that this whole thing's a farce, like we've been talking about. But when she goes off, that's when there's sort of the third act, climax, where she's being chased by Adrian Brody's character after he's been sort of like thrown in this empty house, sort of like imprisoned. And he escapes, and he's chasing after Ivy because I think he has a crush on her, right?
Yeah.
That's why he stabbed Lucius, because he was jealous.
Right.
Noah has a handicap. I'm not sure what it is. It's some sort of disability, but
right.
So he's sort of chasing after Ivy while she's trying to make way through the woods and get medicine. And obviously Ivy thinks, or now knows, that this whole thing is sort of made up. It's this sort of mythology that the elders have created to contain the villagers and not want them to sort of venture off outside of the village. But now that we already know that, then it shows this whole sequence where we're seeing this creature chasing and trying to attack Ivy. I think it should have been sort of switched in a way. I mean, don't you agree? Where you're seeing...
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it provided a nice, like... I still wasn't entirely sure what was going on, because at that point in the movie, that it's the elders that are doing all of that activity, and it almost misleads you to think that it's because William Hurt, he gets into a couple of pretty heated arguments about what to do about Lucius's situation and whether or not to send Ivy to the towns. And, he ends up doing it, but he's discouraged to do so by at least one or two of the elders. And so you almost wonder if it's one of the elders that's chasing Ivy down. And that's where I thought it would be one of them, the same one that was maybe skinning the animals and leaving them all over the lawns and all that stuff. Like, we know that someone had been pestering the village, but they hadn't revealed it to be Noah yet. So you see Noah locked up, and that's another great reveal. That's another great twist of the movie, is that not just kind of uncovering that it's current day in this city or whatever, but that Noah was the one all along that had access in his house under the floorboards to one of the costumes. And and not only did he stab Lucius, but he also tried to chase her down. And what about his psychology was causing him to, his mind, like what was going through his mind. We talk about a disability, but there's something there where he was excited by the, causing fear or scaring her. Maybe he was upset because she chose Joaquin Phoenix. I don't really know what his motivations were, but that whole sequence was really interesting because you're thinking, like, we know that the monsters aren't real, but we don't know who that is in the costume. So it still had a really a great amount of suspense, even though we weren't really like super scared of it being a monster.
Yeah, well, and it's almost like, I mean, for me, and I don't necessarily hate it, but it's almost like, I think if they could have structured it a little bit differently, I think it could have had more impact, to where you have the moment with her and her father in the shed, and he tells her it's a farce. Right. But there's still a part of me that was like, maybe he was just messing with her, or not messing with her, but sort of.
You're really not sure if you can trust him.
Yeah, so there's still that possibility that these creatures could be actual, like, monsters.
Right,
but then it ends up not being the case. So it's almost like you're disappointed twice, because he says it's a farce. Oh, that's kind of a bummer. And then it's a second time where it's...
And then it actually does end up being a farce. Yeah, part of you wants it to be, it'd just be more exciting of a moment if it was actually these strange creatures.
Right.
But...
And I think...
he's trying to protect... I mean, I think it's more believable and more realistic, though, like, for it to... Like, this movie, like, really could happen.
That's true.
In real life.
Yeah.
Like,
people can
and
go
a lot
out and
of
do it.
Cultures actually do live this way. And, you got to respect the notion, the idea, like, it's a perfectly possible thing that could happen in real life, that someone with the resources could try to create something like this. I think, and it's happened a lot of different times in history. People have tried to create these, like, isolated, now they get called cults, and over the last 100 years, they would almost, like, discriminate against groups of people like this that have their own ideologies and want to group up and do something different. And that's a shame, because they just want to live in peace like these people, Yeah,
I mean, the United States wouldn't be formed if we hadn't had people that wanted to separate themselves from the church or whatever. So,
but I think, like, it's such an important element of this movie, and it's such a great piece of writing in the way that they portray and William Hurt delivers the performance like amazingly. I mean, I can't really. We'll get into the cast and their performances a little bit deeper here in a bit, but I mean, the idea of them wanting to create something that was better for their next generation and allow them to be free from some of the horrors of the outside world that they had experienced in their past, and creating an environment that's safe and secure, and where they're able to maintain innocence and all of that. And we've got a clip actually of a bit of what William Hurt was getting at when he's kind of trying to decide what to do about sending Ivy to the towns and the village's politics of making that decision and what's on the line if they expose remove the facade of that they've created.
What have you done?
He is the victim of a crime.
We have agreed never to go back. Never!
What was the purpose of our leaving? Let us not forget it was out of hope of something good and right.
You should not have made decisions without us. You have gone too
I'm
far.
guilty, Robert! I made a decision of the heart. I cannot look into another's eyes and see the same look I see in August's without justification. It is too painful. I cannot bear it.
You have jeopardized everything we've made.
Who do you think will continue this place, this life? Do you plan to live forever? It is in them that our future lies. It is in Ivy and Lucius that this way of life will continue. Yes, I have risked. I hope I am always able to risk everything for the just and right cause. If we did not make this decision, we could never again call ourselves innocent. And that, in the end, is what we have protected here. Innocence! That I'm not ready to give up.
William Hurt, ladies and gentlemen.
It's awesome.
Yeah, the guy is a legend.
My favorite line or favorite sequence of maybe the entire movie was he's talking to Brendan Gleeson, and Brendan Gleeson asks, how could he have sent Ivy? She's blind. What chance would she have to make it? And he says, she's more capable than most in the village. She's led by love. The world moves for love. It kneels before it in awe. Like the writing of this movie, and there's some really great writing in the scene between Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard, where Joaquin Phoenix kind of tells her that he loves her more or less. I think they're sitting on the porch at night and they're talking together, and it's really just great filmmaking. Like it's I don't know. It's some of the best stuff, at least in this kind of movie, that you're ever going to get. You're not always going to get performances like this in these like thriller suspense kind of movies. It's that's the cool thing about it. That's what makes it so unique. But yeah, William Hurt, I mean, between him and Bryce Dallas Howard, their performances are pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, and I mean, regardless of whether you buy into sort of the reveals or the twists, I think most people should at least be able to sort of, I mean, I hope be able to acknowledge, like, this is a really technically well-made movie. The writing's on point. You even have Roger Deakins doing the cinematography, and it's a beautifully shot movie. Like there's some stuff like where they're shooting like a pond or a stream, and there's the reflections with the red of the monster or the creature, and just some of the the landscapes and the use of colors, it really looks great. And
well, like the red, the bad color,
yes.
like they really make that pop in the movie. And all of kind of like the lantern lit scene, like everything is just, it really adds to the suspense, and it either lends to the suspense or it lends to the romance of the movie. Like it's so emotional, and the music plays a part in that as well. And I thought, like, and I think with the related to the cast, like I feel like Adrian Brody, and could it be like, was he coming off The Pianist going into this movie? Or because I just feel like when I was seeing The Village come out, like I feel like Adrian Brody, like because I think The Pianist was 2002, so and it was an Oscar award-winning movie, so I feel like he really grabbed a lot of attention when this came out, and his role for me was pretty secondary, especially now watching it kind of, with I feel like my eyes now of having seen a lot more quality films than I had when back in that time. I was 16 years old or whatever back then. So it just kind of, I don't know, his role took a back seat, and it's an integral part of the movie, but I never back then appreciated William Hurt and Bryce Dallas Howard as much as I do now. So
yeah, I think Joaquin Phoenix, his character sort of gets the short end of the stick. I mean, going into this movie, you think his character is sort of the lead character in this movie, but it's really Bryce Dallas Howard's character, Ivy. She's really the sort of focal point of this entire film. And revisiting this movie, every time I rewatch this thing, I always forget that Adrian Brody's in this movie. And I think he does such a great job at just sort of like blending into this character. Yeah. And
he almost adds to the realism. Yeah. Almost just very authentic as far as his performance, very believable, his quality. I feel like if he was someone I didn't know, the actor, if I didn't know the name, then I don't know if I would recognize the quality of the performance as much, but he definitely did a good job for sure. And I feel like with Joaquin Phoenix, like I almost feel like the way they shot the movie in the first half, at least, it's important to make him the primary focus in a lot of the scenes, so that when Adrian Brody, Noah, does stab him in the way he does, like it's so shocking. Like it's just so, it's like, that doesn't happen to the protagonist, so there's almost a shift there where you have Joaquin Phoenix kind of being the protagonist in the beginning, but then from that point on where he gets injured, Bryce Dallas Howard really just takes full control over as far as that goes, and takes us home from there.
Yeah. But after the break, we're going to be getting into James Newton Howard's score. I loved the score in this movie. And how this, the twists and reveals in The Village sort of stack up with the rest of M. Night's other films. So we'll be right back. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/abominations and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audible.com/abominations and get started today.
There was a point in making the movie where it was very, very scary, and we were really over there on that side of the fence and very eerie and weird. And then it started to tilt back over this way. And then there was just a decision made 2/3 through the process of scoring, where I said, throw everything out. We're going to go for emotion. We're going to make this a romance.
The most interesting aspect of this score for me was that it was the most performance-oriented score. That we had lived with this idea in my demos for a long time, in a virtual score and the computers and the samples for a long time. And then when it was performed, it changed in a way that no other score I've ever done has. And Hillary brought a lot of that to us. She elevated it to a completely unexpected level for me. And that was a transformational moment for me. I mean, and I think for Night too. And I think in that regard, this score is unique for us.
I really think this is the best score that he's ever done. It's so emotional, and there's no way we'll be able to top this. This is just too good. And that feeling of when you hear the score and that happens, it's a nice feeling.
All right, so definitely one of the highlights in this movie for me is James Newton Howard's score. I think it just, I don't know, after rewatching it this last time, it just really stuck with me. And I don't know, it's so beautiful, and it just like sets the tone of this movie, whether or not it works for you or not. I don't know, but like there's a ton of emotion in this, and we hear that these guys talk about how they were going to focus on more tension or horror moments, but they really decided to focus on the emotion with the score, and even sort of 2/3 of the way through shifting that. So it almost makes me feel like I know a lot of writer and directors, when one guy's doing the same thing, they're even like writing while on set. So for example, like Christopher McQuarrie with the last Mission Impossible movie, the script wasn't even done. That guy was like writing scenes like while on set. So I'm sure like M. Night might have done some of that with The Village, but it's kind of shocking hearing, and not entirely shocking, but like how I guess I can sort of understand why 2/3 of the way through they sort of shifted the tone of this movie from being more horror or thriller centered to more of a emotional or a period piece like romance flick in a way.
Yeah. I really think that saves it, because I feel like if you go the route of just making it this like thriller monster horror kind of vibe, like with the way that this movie twists and reveals the farce, like I feel like it would end like a bad horror movie, like it's like, oh, they woke up and it was all a dream. You know what I mean? It would end really anticlimactically. So by using the score as a tool to really elevate the emotion and the romance and the motives of the characters and give them a little bit more, to my point, I guess, that we were making about William Hurt and his performance and kind of showing the I don't know, the emotional ties of the elders and their children and that whole thing, as well as the love story between Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard, like that, those things are so important for this movie to make it dynamic that you have to really accent those with the score. Like the score has to help all of those dynamics out to make it I don't know, just to make it so that those things make sense, because you can't just have this like really suspenseful, eerie tone through the whole thing and then expect these emotional scenes to work. It doesn't. You need that emotion to match the music, or the dialogue and the performances have to match the music in order to create that emotion in the viewer. So I thought it was successful all the way around, and that's not an easy thing to do in a movie like this by any means. So that's partly why I feel like it's a very good movie.
Yeah. Well, and there could almost have been a scenario where the performances were weaker but you still have a great score. Yeah. But when it's a combination of incredibly strong performances with Bryce Dallas Howard and William Hurt, with an incredible score that just packs a punch full of emotion and just depth and character, like it's just this outrageous combo that really works for me. And like I was just sort of like humming the violin in the back of my head sort of after watching this movie. And I don't know if it's his best score. I still really love his Unbreakable theme.
Yeah.
That might.
Oh yeah.
Take the cake
the end
me,
when he says, "The children, they called me Mr. Glass." I mean, when they're playing that score at the end there, when he kind of reveals that he was the one who caused all of those events, like it's just this climax. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The his ability to tell stories and to allow these things to like unravel before you with such a punch is it. In Signs, I mean, to talk about the way that the ending of Signs, when you think that the son is dead because the chemicals he would have breathed them in, but he had asthma, so he didn't breathe them in, and they say swing Meryl, or swing away Meryl. Yeah. I think he says to Joaquin Phoenix, like that was the last thing his wife said. Like just these things that like these callbacks to earlier in the movie that all of the sudden they all make sense, and you have this like epiphany, this like, his ability to create that for you and make you like, there's just something about that. Like you almost have to like write the movie backwards in order to do that. Like there's something to say about that, the genius of that, or just the level of sophistication. It has to be respected. So, I mean, debatable whether or not this one, where you'd rank them. Do we dare rank them? Are you ready for that? Would you want to do that?
Well, I haven't seen all of his. Like there was a gap. I was high on the Sham Hammer Horse until Lady in the Water. I think that was directly after this one. But I mean, as far as like The Sixth Sense to The Village, and then you have The Happening in there, which
I feel like when I saw The Sixth Sense, I was younger and less able to make predictions on what was going to happen. So that movie knocked me on my ass. Like I didn't have any idea that was coming. Unbreakable, I feel like that one too. I think that one is somewhat predictable just because you get the feeling that Sam Jackson, there's something not quite right there. And you're just kind of like, where's this going? Who's the villain? Like, it couldn't just be that the villain was this bad guy that he ran into at the train station. Like, otherwise the movie almost has no villain. So you almost expect like, okay, it's something's going to go down. And then Signs that movie is just amazing. Like that whole end sequence, it's not so much like a reveal, but it's like a series of things that happened for a reason. Like it's pulling all of these different things, pieces, details, little bits, and it's taking them all from previously in the movie where it might have just been a slight detail that happened in passing or something that you wouldn't have even noticed, and then it brings it back all put together in the end. Like, so for that one, I think I would say my favorite one would be Signs of all of them. And then I'd probably go Signs, Unbreakable, The Village, and then Sixth Sense.
What about Split?
I didn't really care for Split, like the diner scene.
No.
But you spoiled that for me though.
Well, yes, but
so I knew
this was like
coming.
6 months after the movie came out, and M. Night already announced like publicly that he was making Glass.
But I didn't know that.
That's true.
You spoiled it for me and said you should have already known it. Which is so evil.
Yeah. But I will say my favorite probably, I don't know. It's I would say it's neck and neck between Unbreakable and Split. Just because with Split, I almost didn't really necessarily like the movie that much up until that sequence at the end with Bruce Willis.
Right.
And sorry if you haven't seen Split, but deal with it. But that connection, that thread that linked those movies. And because I mean, you had James McAvoy running around and climbing on the walls and stuff, and I'm like, well, what is this? This is silly. You know, it's this guy who talks in different voices and
talks about the beast.
All of a sudden, he has like superhuman strength, and he's climbing on walls and whatnot. But then you have a shot in a diner with Bruce Willis, and then the Unbreakable theme music comes soaring through, and I had no idea. You know. But hearing that music and then that connection, like it was just like, it was mind blowing.
And Unbreakable is just such an under the radar, unappreciated, like that movie. I feel like it gets overlooked so much.
It was ahead of its time.
It's really a great movie. Like, it's just really kind of like, I don't know. It's like art. It's like a painting. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like people don't really appreciate art in that form today. And I feel like Unbreakable is like a movie that's one of those. It's like one that's just not appreciated. It's, I don't know, something about it just got overlooked, lost in the wash, I guess, you know, kind of thing. But
yeah, well, you could equate it to like Marvel being a Big Mac, and then Unbreakable being like filet mignon, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, The Village, I almost like sort of explain it to people like if they saw the movie a decade ago and they didn't like it, go back and rewatch it with this new perspective of sort of understanding what actually is going on. And you'll see these things that have been woven into the story. And I think you'll really appreciate it and give it another rewatch. And I think you'll enjoy it, especially the performances and the music and the cinematography. It's a really well-made movie, and unfortunately, it all sort of comes down to whether you sort of buy into the reveals or how the story sort of overall resolves itself, I guess. But I really enjoy The Village.
Yeah, and I love, like, the one thing that I really like about M. Night Shyamalan movies is that I realize that it's never the same after you've seen it the first time. The second time would probably be the next best time, because then you can look at it you can watch it with a totally new perspective. It probably won't be as good as the first time, but you might pick up on more details, and therefore you might enjoy kind of having that enlightened experience. Now, beyond that, though, it's also fun to watch these with other people that haven't seen them. So I like to have that element of like sitting in the room with someone who hasn't seen the movie and seeing their reaction when they have like the, you know, the I am your father moment, like the big plot twist reveal, and seeing the reaction. Like, that's a lot of fun. And I feel like, you know, we need more movies like that. I think it's lacked, especially we talked about earlier. I made a comment about the Hollywood being kind of overburdened with comic book superhero movies, like it can be done where we can have some of that stuff, but also have like really great writing with twists and turns and unexpected things happening too. Like, give it to us.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sort of, not that there's few sort of, there's always good movies being made, but they just sort of get overshadowed by these massive blockbusters, which is kind of a bummer. Which, not that it's sort of, I guess, relates to this, but Hereditary was a movie that came out this past summer, which I thought was an incredible horror movie that has some great sort of unexpected moments in it. And, some of it's a slow burn, but there's also some crazy moments in that movie. But unfortunately, people, they just see the trailers for these massive movies, and, a lot of people just don't have the time, or they don't really care to go check out everything. So the movies that they're going to go see are going to be the big spectacles, the Star Wars, the Marvel movies, Aquaman, what have you. So, but there's definitely some great stuff. You just have to dig a little bit deeper, unfortunately.
Yep. Don't trust Rotten Tomatoes. Rule number 1.
Yes. And if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, actually read the critic reviews, because Rotten Tomatoes, what it does is it takes it aggregates reviews and either gives a positive, a fresh review for a critic, or a rotten review for a critic, depending on their score. So it's like this critic rates it positive or negative. So there's really no middle ground. So a critic could rate something like, they could give it like a 7 out of 10, or I think even like a 6.5 out of 10, and it'll be a fresh review. So it's not necessarily a score or like a grade. Like, it's not like a teacher grading a paper. It's just an aggregated average of how many critics gave it a positive review. So you got to take Rotten Tomatoes with a grain of salt, dig in a little bit deeper, and see what critics are actually saying about the movie. So that's what we sort of try and do here, is we try and find these movies that have been sort of lost in the shuffle of time, that aren't necessarily talked about that much anymore, and revisit them, and hopefully we can have a discussion with you guys.
Yep. Look at them in a new light.
Definitely. But Adam, what do we have on the docket next week?
So next week, it's an oldie but goodie, at least by our age standards here. But we're going to go back to The Never-Ending Story. And this was special request from one of our listeners. We wanted to just kind of let you guys know, if you have any films that you want us to cover, we will do them. And especially this one, I believe, is available on Hulu right now as well. So if anyone wants to check this out prior to our upcoming episode, get a little refresher, and also give us a call or an email as well, and let us know what you think about The Never-Ending Story. If you want to give us a call, you can reach us at 616-594-0764, or email us at abominationspod@gmail.com, and we'll try to get into a little discussion related to your thoughts and opinions on The Never-Ending Story.
Yeah. So we want to give a shout out to Todd Fox. He hit us up on Twitter and suggested The Never-Ending Story. So we're excited to dig into that one. But for Adam and myself, we'll see you next week.